Good morning, everyone. I'm delighted. It's after spring break. We're back to our soil science seminar. And I'm doubly delighted. Our speaker today is Rebecca Alice Wokibula. Ms. Wokibula is a native of Uganda. She grew up in Iganga, Uganda, so in eastern Uganda. And then she went to Makerere University for her baccalaureate. Following her degree, she worked for a little bit, like with coffee and such in Uganda. And then she worked with Mark Westgate, got a master's degree here at Iowa State. She returned to Uganda, worked with a variety of groups trying to do agricultural development across Uganda. And then a couple years ago, she graciously agreed to come and work with me here at Iowa State on her PhD. And what she's going to do today is give her seminar on one part of her PhD project. With that, Becky, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Boras. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good to have you all here, and hope you enjoy. Thank you, Dr. Boras, for the introduction. Today I'm just going to share part of my PhD. My entire PhD research is on integrating pedology, liming, and fertilizing best agronomic practices for sustainable cacao production. But for today, I'm going to focus on the pedology part and just share with you a story with the 6 small-scale farms that I selected to share. I would like to introduce you to my POS committee members who are here. Dr. Ali Boras is my major professor, and 4 others. Terry Cruz, thank you for being here. Dr. Andrew Manu, thank you for being here. Dr. David Acker and Dr. Richard Schultz are not here, but I'm sure they're online because I shared the link with them. So thank you so much. Everybody's online for watching. Learn something today. We're looking at the objective is to assess the pedology of the 6 small-scale farms, and specifically to determine the landscapes, and then classify the soils of the 6 small-scale farms. This for the PhD, this will extend to a bigger area beyond the 6 farms. And then the hypothesis is the pedology of the 6 farms really does not differ across the landscape, and the alternative is, well, it varies across the landscape. Just to give you a background of cocoa, which is cacao. That is the name I'm going to refer to it as, cacao. It is one of the key commodities that the government is emphasizing for small-scale farmers to grow and to be able to lift themselves out of poverty. This is because it is able to be integrated with the other food crops they are growing on farm. And that way, if they're able to get a food crop and then get a cash crop, then there's hope that there will be some income stability at the small-scale farms. So that is why we are looking at the cacao landscapes in Uganda and integrating pedology with them. So just here we are seeing 2 farmers on their farms. The gentleman is one very interested in agroforestry. You'll find a lot of diversity on his farm. The lady is one of the most hardworking women that I have met, and she knows what she does. And then the 3rd picture is just another male farmer who has grown cacao for 40 years. And if there's a story to tell, that's the farmer that we keep taking to the people to tell them that, yes, you can actually get out of poverty, or you can increase some income household when you grow this crop. This is still how we are seeing more about cacao is we are seeing it if you grow it in monocrop, which is not very common in Uganda because of the small-scale farmers having to eat some food on the same farm. So we grow it a lot of intercrops. We put in bananas, beans, and brown nuts, but anything you want, you can grow it with cacao and it will thrive. still we look at if you don't prune it, it will make a bush, and when it grows to full, like about 6 years and above, it can actually close in. So it's important that you make sure that if you're going to continue having subsistence farming on your farm, you want to mind that once you set up this crop, you still have some room for your food crops. So it matters that the small-scale farmers actually use a little bit of a bigger spacing because they need other crops before the canopy shades them out. So again, I'll thank the department for every opportunity they give us to be here because we are coming from Africa and we're here in agronomy doing our PhDs, but still there's high funding and donations coming in for us to be able to go back home and do our projects. So this project is in Uganda, specifically in Kamundi, and Kamundi is just above the equator, where we have an elevation of 1,000 flat. The mean annual rainfall is good, about 1,000 millimeters. 2 dry seasons which are bad. When the sun shines, it's really bad. And then the mean annual temperature is about 22 degrees Celsius. So it's in the watershed of the River Nile and the Lake Choga in the north. So that is Kamuli. As a pedologist, we bring in the aspect of geology, and we are looking at primarily 2 geologies for this Kamuli region. One is the old Precambrian granite, that's where the soils are seated. But once in a while, we have the Nile River back flooding, and then the local streams also flooding. And there's a lot of sedimentation that comes in with the flooding. And so we have some quaternary edge sediments, and some of them might be as young as the Holocene age. So we might be seeing soils that are young as the Iowa soils in this region when it comes to the lower areas where the sedimentation is taking place. For the methods, we go out there and are able to, with the help of other people. So there is an organization called ISUUP, which is on ground and working with the small-scale farmers. So with their help, we are able to identify so many farmers that are working on cacao. And that's how we identify the farms and then dig the pedons and take the location and coordinate for that, observe the surroundings, and then sample from the pedons that we have dug. So this is just a representation of what we do when we dig the pedons. Just see any horizonations in the pedons and mark out the significant features that you're seeing in there, and then take soil samples, and then those are sent to the lab for analysis beyond the field observations. When we take them, this was the Makerere University lab that we used in Uganda. And so these are some of the tests that were run in the lab. And introducing you to the results is, I'll just give a thank you to other colleagues of mine who have been very helpful. One of them is in the room, Johnson. So he's in the room, and then the other is Francis Achtuine. He's online. So these are the people we are every day interfacing with, but still with the donations and the funding and the support of the Department of Agronomy. Johnson is from Tanzania, but he gets time to come to Uganda, and we get time to go to Tanzania to collaborate on so many of the studies. So thank you again, the department, for such opportunities for us to be able to learn beyond Uganda and beyond Africa. So our landscapes, they are gently sloping, and these are just a representation of the 6 farms right there on my right, on my left. So those are the 6 farms. I don't know if you're able to see the yellow, small yellow points, but yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then getting that closed in is just farm number 3, which is marked by the red right there, and seeing how its landscape plays out. And so for that farm that I'm representing here, it's we were able to identify all the 3 parent materials that are in the Kamiri region, and they are the residuum, colluvium, and alluvium. So these are the 3 representative peats where we identified, and so those are the 3 representative peats where we identified the 3 different sets of parent material. Sharing with you the Katina, or the idealized Katina of this area of Kamiri region, and integrating it with the results that we found is you'll see the Precambrian, the old Precambrian granite laying down in the profiles. And then the residuum is that part which is weathering in place and forming soil on this old Precambrian. So it's some of it is really a deep profile, some of it is really shallow, basing on the different physical properties there, but it is a beautiful residuum profile that we found there. 3 soils were represented. We found 3 of the soils being oxysols and just 1 alkysol of the 6 farms. Then on the lower part of the landscape, we have the alluvium that is brought in by the sedimentations and the flooding that comes from the lowlands and the flowing rivers. And so it is, most of it is freshly being deposited there and quite young. And then we have the colluvium, which connects the 2, the up and the downer part, which is gets some erosion coming from the residuum. And once it gets a portion where it can be deposited, it is deposited right there on the colluvium. But we also have some more, depending on the energy by which the water is flowing, some more sedimentation happening still going to the colluvium part. So it's really an intermediate part region, and it's influenced by both these 2 places, upslope and downslope. We found 3 alkysols on colluvium and 3 alkysols. 3 of them were antisols, 1 of them just polysols. Just putting the results. So now I idealized Katina, putting just the pictures. On the residuum, we see some of them are deep, but some of them are shallow. This is an example of a shallow profile, which is just where Francis is standing, like it just goes up to his shirt or slightly above his shirt. So that is, he's really standing on cliffite right there. And we have the middle part, which is, you're seeing there is the red part, which is more like the residuum, but then there is also this part that has been deposited over time from the processes that are happening of erosion and then the sedimentation. And then we have the alluvium represented on the lower scale, where you see, I don't know if you can see, but I'm right there stepping in mud. There's water seeping out of that pit. So it's very interesting how on a very short landscape, you're actually seeing all these differences in the fields. So it's beautiful and also very enlightening that those differences are happening. And looking at the texture, the soils in Uganda are totally a little bit different from what I've seen here in Ames, where we're seeing a lot of silts and touching it and we're thinking, oh, this is so soft. I haven't seen such soil. In Uganda, when you feel the soil, it is really gritty. We're going to find we have lots of clay and we have lots of sand. There's very little in between there. So for the representative pedons, we have an average of sandy clay loam, but it keeps going both ways into the sandy clay and then into the sandy shards. Tying it up with the parent material, we see more of the sand proportion in alluvium and low clay proportion in alluvium. So this is where we bring in what matters when we are having soils in everywhere, anyway, not only in Uganda, but what matters. We want to consider the organic matter, we want to consider the clay and then the CEC. So what is it looking like in the soils? So just looking at organic matter, we're seeing residue having the highest organic matter. And then colluvium, not so different, but a little bit higher. But because it's a zone of intermediate, we can't really keep it there. It can be high or down, depending on the sample we have. And then we're seeing alluvium with the lowest organic matter. Shifting to clay content, percent clay content. Then we're seeing alluvium still very low in clay content. And then the other two are high in clay content. Now, bringing it back to seeing how much clay is actually contributing to the CEC. We bring in the mean CEC by parent material. So looking at the CEC by parent material, we still see the lowest CEC in alluvium. But now when we turn it around and plot mean CEC by clay, we see that there is a lot of contribution to CEC by the alluvium. And then, so the story changes from what we see right there when we bring in the clay content in material. And so this gets us to be thinking what is driving the CEC in this area. We're seeing more of clays driving the CEC, the alluvium, and we're seeing more of organic matter driving the CEC in the residue. So it's really an interesting thing to know if we're going to manage our soils, what we focus on, what will bring us more advantage. And that also highlights something about the differences in the clay. It is also possible that where we're seeing CEC driven by clay could be a smectite right there. And then the residue we could have more of the kaolinite clays. So that is where the importance of mineralogy comes in. And I think that's one thing that we shall be focusing on for other parts of the research. So bringing in also the aspect of calcium content, CEC and calcium saturation. We see that calcium content is really high on the residue. And if you take it, this is the same graph that I showed CEC by parent material on the previous slide, right? And then we get mean CEC, mean calcium by CEC actually leaves, and we see a high calcium in the alluvium than we're seeing in the other two parent materials. So still this tells you that, okay, if we're seeing more calcium in the alluvium and we're seeing more CEC contributed by clay in the alluvium, then we tend to still want to say that, yeah, we could have some smectites in that alluvium that are able to complex more with the calcium. And probably in the residue, it might not really be that high calcium like we're seeing here, but it's still substantially high. But though we might still have in some other oxides like heavy iron, but at least we have some substantial calcium. And so bringing it back to the idealized Katina, in the zone where we're seeing the more CEC right there, more calcium saturation, we tend to see more molecules in those values down slow. And then in the other end where we're seeing more CEC contributed by clay or more kaolinites, then a little bit lower saturation compared to the lower slope. those tend to be more of the outsourced. And that is what we saw now those we were digging. And this is just another one where we have pH and calcium being in sync when we see on the residue material. And so this is still a good reminder that the depth of the profile matters. There is a lot of changes that take place in the profile that if you didn't go deeper, you would miss something out of it. So that is the resonation aspect and how different things can change down the profile. And then the other thing is there is a lot that goes on in these small scale farms. And so this is just one of the representative farms that I put here. It is all situated in alluvium. These are so the yellow highlight is his area, but I just pulled in to see that what is happening with all the other neighboring farms vis-a-vis his farm. But concentrating on the yellow portion right there, you see that in 2011 and 2017, he had really big trees and coffee and then mornings. And then when we come to 2017, something changes with his vegetation. So we are seeing younger trees right here. And then in 2022, when we started working with him, we found him when he already had cacao growing. And so the vegetation has picked up in picture number 4. So this just shows you how much of the decision making happens with the small scale farmers when we introduce some of these so-called crops or cash crops that are going to help a farmer get up. So they have to make decisions. What do I cut down? What do I not cut down? So for this farmer, he started planting cacao in 2016. And so by the time we found his cacao was already growing and he's already harvesting. Yeah, so I'm coming to the end of the presentation. We're seeing that pedology have very high ramifications for cacao production. It is very highly variable, like you see how short of a distance foreign material is differing. And then we are able to understand this geology. And so we're also able to understand that. And then advising farmers, you would say you need to consider the pedology. When you think of, oh, my neighbor did this, so I should be doing the same thing. You need to take into and with that, I would still again say thank you to everyone who's here and to the department and to IPOS members for studying for us for today. Thank you so much.
And so now Becky will be happy to entertain questions. She's normally a really exciting speaker, but somehow today she wasn't as excited. But she will be excited to answer questions, right, Becky? Excellent. So any questions, please?
So Becky, good job, especially in those trenches. I know how much effort the guys took in digging those trenches. Yeah. So my question is, the results that you presented, is it the mean value for each farm or the mean for all the 6 locations?
So that is the mean location by parent material.
So you did not take into consideration whether there will be variation within each field?
There is variation, but we're just looking at the pedals on alluvium. Then summing those up and getting a mean.
So can I ask a friendly follow-up? So Becky, for the seminar, you just presented the means for each for the parent material. But for your dissertation and your defense project, you'll present a more robust approach. And then I saw Dr. Manu had a question. Sorry, did you have another question? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. So we have more questions. Go. Otherwise, Dr. Manu, please.
Okay, well, I thank you, Ms. Becky. That was really good. Just based on some experience living on the cocoa plantation all my life before I came here, I'm kind of a little concerned about the Katina concept you are using for your work there. Because I know cocoa can't stand cold wet feet. It's not going to do well.
Sure.
In a very, so what are you going to do about that? The alluvium area there, 8 farmers are going to plant there because there's no way cocoa is going to survive in a wet environment.
So we have this farmer here who has soil, most of the soil on alluvium, and he has actually given up most of the lowest part of the landscape. So we are like, okay, why aren't you using the lowest part of the landscape? He says, my cacao, or whatever I'm planting right there is not working for me, and I want to get money out of this crop. So I'm trying to put it. So he has now expanded. So where I have drawn his farm, next year we are going to be able to see more younger trees up scale. So he's extending the farm in a higher end. And so it is true. The farmers are seeing it, we're also seeing it. And yeah, they're making some decisions to change. Yeah. And if we are to take some farmers who have already experienced the growing cacao on the different parent material, this is one farmer that will tell the story. That okay, if this is your land, please, might as well want to know more about the pedology. If it looks like mine exactly, then save yourself the labor and just don't plant there right away because this is a lifetime investment.
Dr. Cruz.
In your title, you indicate this is for small farms. What constitutes a small farm versus a large farm in that area?
So,
And are there larger farms? Is that important relative to the study?
it's important because in the Kami region, we find people who are having less than 5 acres altogether per family. And in that family, there's not only one son on those 5 acres. So you'll find that, okay, the father has 5 acres, but he has like 7 sons and probably 2 girls who are not married. And so if we're going to grow cacao, we still need to grow food in the same farm. So we're looking at still those farms that are ideally less than 5 acres. How can we bring in this commodity alongside crops? So we have a lot of small scale farms in Uganda.
What would a large farm be?
If you saw 10 acres, people would say that is large. Partly because we are still manual, we're doing a lot of manual labor. So there is no tractor going to be plowing those 10 acres. So you're going to hire men to dig for you. And if it's a season where we are all preparing our land, then these few men who know how to dig are shared among the bigger population of the community. So you're going to find that still the 10 acres is going to be a hard job to manage for the person who has it. And so then those are the people who are going to say, okay, I'm not going to rely on manual labor. Maybe I'll bring in an equipment and be able to farm. But for a typical farmer, small scale farmer, that will be so big to manage. You'll find that most of it is just left under fallow because he didn't make it in time for the season to clear it and use it.
So Becky, you said that farmer might have like 7 sons with 5 acres. Why is that relevant to farm size?
So it is a little bit it's relevant, very relevant, because usually, culture-wise, the sons would inherit the land from their fathers. And if the father has 7 sons, he's going to want to give the land equally, distributed equally to his sons. So really, if there's not going to be commotion in the family, that's the right thing to do. If you decide to say, oh, I give it to this one and the rest of you go find a way, then that is not very common. So it's all about culture, and
In one generation, it'll be a 1 acre farm, subsistence farm.
Is Becky, for the small scale farming system that you have in Uganda, how does plantain system affect farm size? And do you have some who rent land? Or how does the land tenure system in Uganda affect farm sizes?
So for the land tenure system in Uganda, it is still an interesting story there. We have land that we inherit, and that would be recognized by you having some sort of document. Actually, this land belongs to this person, and this person gave me this land. And so you would expect that when that person now has to sell that land, there would still be an agreement that I am writing to release my land. However, if it's me going to buy that land, sometimes I'll want to have a title beyond just a contract in that. So it also affects how land is used and how land is. Because if I'm really coming in to buy land and broke a cow, which is a lifetime investment, me who has money and wants to buy land, I might be demanding that, okay, I need a title for the land. So it might, in that case, it might limit if the person I'm buying land from is not legally owning a documentation. But there's a lot of work that is happening right now. And so we're seeing more farmers being able to have legal documentation of their farms. But that is more in the urban places than in the farm states. But there's work in progress when it comes to India.
Becky, would you go to slide 18? I think it's 18. This one works perfect. Excellent. Thank you very much. So I like this slide. So you have this nice block or cross section. No, 18. Yeah. Well, we can talk 19 if you'd rather too, but maybe we'll talk 18. Well, you have this really nice cross section down the bottom where you say there's more kaolinite in the residuum. CEC is more contributed by the organic matter, presumably because of the low kaolinite and low calcium saturation. And your data shows that. And then down in the alluvium, much higher CEC on a clay fraction basis, a much higher calcium saturation. What's the processes happening across that landscape, and what's the processes related to the river that explain that?
Yeah, so in this part of the landscape, we're having the bases that's leaching.
Okay.
So we're seeing calcium leach down the profile. It comes to the raised dam right there.
Okay, the residuum is seeing leaching.
Yeah, there's leaching right there. And it also leaches vertically, but it can also leach horizontally into the colluvia right there.
Okay.
And then there's also part of the soil erosion taking place.
Sure.
And the deposition on the lower parts of the colluvia here. So those we have some leaching there, and we have some erosion there. And then when we come into the alluvium, we have new deposits that are coming up from the streams that are flooding into this land. And so we have more depositions of calcium from the different islands still coming into the alluvium here.
There's a very different set of processes depending where you're at in the landscape.
Different.
How about remind me the ages of the landscape. How old are the soils formed in the residuum versus how old are the soils formed in the
So the soils of the residuum are really old. We are seeing them with the Precambrian granite, where they're doing that. So that's over over 500 million years we are talking about in the residuum. And then we have some new material in the colluvium, but still we have a lot of old Precambrian granite, which is in the intermediate
mixed in
section. And in the alluvium, we have really young material that is coming in as the local streams flood and as the River Nile floods, we see some new sedimentation coming down. And so this alluvium is really young, I would say, for about, could be about 2 million to 10,000 years.
Some of them may have been deposited yesterday.
Or yesterday,
And they're having
depending
floods.
on the floods that are happening. Yeah, so we're having some.
Okay, yeah. Different recycling. Okay, thank you. Dr. Thompson, and then Dr. Menu.
Becky, I'd like to ask two questions, but maybe the answer to the first I won't need to ask the second. But the first question has to do with the residuum, where I think you said that you found both oxasols and alpha sols in that some of the residuum, these 500 million year soils. And I think of oxasols as being very highly weathered, lots of iron oxides, and B horizons that are dominated by the oxides, clay. And alpha sols, I think of as having an argillic horizon of 2 to 1 layer silicates, not highly weathered. So I wonder under what circumstances do these two different kinds of soils occur in that landscape and develop from residuum?
I realized so this is what Dr. is asking about, how we can find both alpha and oxasols in this area. I would say it is possible, and this being an idealized positioning, sometimes it's hard to actually say that I'm on residuum. So that boundary part might be a little bit challenging to know this is residuum and this is young. So there could be some more clay content that has just been leached into the alpha-sols at that point. So we're identifying the alpha-sols and maybe basing on the parts in the landscape where they are at. Maybe we are calling it residuum, but it is also possible that probably the elevation is different in this area. And so we are still seeing some clay movement into the alpha-sol, into that area where we are calling alpha-sols. And so it could be because they are not entirely like on the same elevation, but following, like neighboring one another. Like I could find an oxysol, and then side by side there's an alphasol. But given the elevation, I'm able to classify that as moving stone.
So where do the 2-to-1 layer silicates come from in the BT horizon of the alpha soils?
So there would be coming from, I would say that so many different processes that happen in the land, especially when we are having it's at the boundary where we are having the alluvium and the colluvium having some deposition into that boundary zone. So there could be this sedimentation into that area, and just like if by any chance it happens to be in an area where it is hard for this idealized landscape to be, and so it's more of a fairly flat landscape, it's possible that we're having so many of these different depositions.
Can I ask a related follow-up question within this? So Becky, would you go to like slide 4? Might be 8 or something, but it's your slide showing the red areas and the black areas. Keep going forward. Keep going. Next slide. This slide. So you mentioned this idea that the red is the residuum, and then the black is where it floods and such from the Nile River and also from the local streams. And you've also mentioned the idea, you're pretty sure there's smectitic type clays in the alluvium. Do you ever have wind erosion in that area?
Wind erosion happening in this.
So can wind erosion blow stuff from the low areas to the high areas? Could there be localized deposition of smectitic clays that way?
Yeah.
Okay. But the bottom line is you're answering Dr. Thompson's question is we don't know yet, or you don't know yet. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I'll give you another
Sure.
hypothesis.
I like that.
Thank you.
I just reviewed a paper dealing with highly weathered soils in the southeastern part of the United States over limestone, relative limestone. And as I reviewed the paper, I read a lot of literature about that area. And I learned that many of those highly weathered soils in the southeastern part of the United States have what people used to call residuum over limestone, actually is composed of wind-blown sediments, coming some from North America, but many of those sediments are coming long distance from Africa, from the Sahara and the Sahel. And I wonder if deposition of dust in this area might, you may not have much dust remaining because of subsequent erosion in those areas that are now calling oxasols. But that dust brings in unweathered material, 2-to-1 layer silicates that end up in the low spots that today are classified as alpha soils. So it's just another hypothesis to consider.
Wind is definitely important.
Whether it's coming up from.
No, locally or farther away, yeah. I'm all for it, yeah.
Thank you.
Dr. Manu.
Thank you, Doc. Yes, I think your study is related to the goal of the farmer, because eventually you are going to tell the farmer, your farm has these properties of the soil. So it's going to affect your yields differently. Have you actually looked at, and I know this is a fresh study, you have any idea about the transition from the uplands all the way to the alluvium, how the yields vary? Because the pocketbook is, if I'm going to buy the land, I want you to tell me I'm not going to make money out of here, this position of the landscape. So how do the soil properties that you've identified going to help me make that decision?
Starting with the pedology here, and also the experience from the farmers we're seeing. Some farmers will tell you that actually this part of the area, my cacao has failed. It's not yielding that good. And so we are also collecting a lot of data with yield. We are still relying on the farmers to gather that data. So we are getting some data on yield, which we will be able to synthesize and see how yield varies across the landscape. So for the entire PhD research, that will be a component that we shall integrate, be able to see more yields per tree, the alluvium, or see more yields per tree. And the other part is we have some new farms that farmers are just planting cacao right now, and we are seeing also a lot of mortality rates happening. So we're seeing that when farmers are planting this area, actually the mortality rates are far beyond another farmer who's planting in a different area. So those are some of the indicators that we are able to look at and then tie it in with pedology and soil classification. So it's the end goal, I should say.
Becky, along that lines, have you also tried any amendments? Have you taken like 1,000 trees and applied different amounts of lime or fertilizer to?
So for the other part where I say that my PhD focuses on pedology, liming and fertilizing, the best management practice for cacao. We are having other experiments running where we're fertilizing the trees, putting NPK, and then where we are liming some of the trees, and then where we're doing both lime and fertilizer, and across the landscape. So we are taking some responses to those, and then tying it also in the pedology of the soil. Okay, which one gave a good response to fertilizer, to lime, and where is it located on the landscape? So it's still work in progress, but we might, or we shall have some good results at the end of this research.
Thank you.
Well, I think our time is up. I want to very much thank our speaker today. So Becky, good job. Thank you very much. I can now say Becky is the happiest student in agronomy 600B because she's completed it. The other 3 students still will. But next week we'll have another seminar. I'll send out a note about it and everything. But I look forward to seeing you all. And I want to thank you all for the questions today. Thank you all very much. See you later.